Hello, and welcome to a new documentary on mountain stories, the channel for all the stories in, on, and around the mountains. Today we bring you the documentary on the 2014 disaster on the Annapurna Circuit. On October 14, 2014, a weather change occurred on the Annapurna Circuit that claimed numerous lives around Thorong La Pass and resulted in one of the largest rescue operations in the Himalayas to date. This is the mountain story on it. The Annapurna Circuit is a trekking route around the Annapurna mountain range in the Nepalese Himalayas. It is considered one of the most beautiful and varied tours in the world. For the complete round you need about 3 weeks. The route leads one from 780 meters of altitude over the Thorong La Pass to over 5,416 meters. This is the highest point of the tour and also one of the highlights. Mostly the pass is crossed from east to west. This is because the difference in altitude on the west side to Mukinat, the next overnight stop, which is decent of about 1,600 meters. This is easier to descend than to ascend. The route is not considered particularly demanding in terms of alpinism, and its additional beauty makes it very popular. Therefore, in the peak season, up to 300 permits are sold per day. This means that every day there are about 6,000 people are on this trek. Another reason why the track is so popular is that you can do it without a tent. Because there are so many places to stay along the way, there is no need for tents, cooking utensils or the like. This also means that many people do this track without tents. Since it is supposedly easy and comfortable to rest, many walk this track alone without guides. Although the track is considered easy, not all trekkers make it to the finish in good health. Every year some trekkers and also local Nepalese porters die around Thorong La Pass. The most common cause of death at the pass is acute altitude sickness. This is mostly due to insufficient acclimatization. That would also to play a decisive role on October 14th. So let's have a look on the events that unfolded on October 14th. A week before the tragedy, meteorologists had already predicted a cyclone. On October 13th, one day before, the weather had already changed. It was now unsettled and completely different from days before. Despite these warnings, which were to be followed by others, more than 160 trekkers set out to cross Thorong La Pass. In the morning there was already 20 to 30 centimeters of fresh snow at high camp on the east side. However, visibility was not yet alarmingly bad. The wind was blowing from east to west, and so most were carried with tailwind towards the pass. At dawn the wind became more and more a hurricane. Turning around on the east side now meant going back against the hurricane or up to the pass with a tailwind. However, the wind blows so hard that the tracks of the person in front disappear within a few seconds. Visibility at this time is less than 100 meters, and with every gust, there is a whiteout which reduces visibility to zero. It is then no longer possible to make out a horizon. Nevertheless, many fight their way up the pass, not knowing that it should be even worse on the other side. Conditions were worst at the top of the pass, where the wind was strongest. The nozzle effect created by the landscape amplified the wind. It was reported that the wind chill was below -50 degrees Celsius. There is a small tea house at the top of the pass. The only place to find shelter from the elements was, as you might imagine, filled to capacity. Many who arrived here were at the highest point of their tour. Many also certainly took much longer than the usual 3 to 5 hours. Those who struggled with acclimatization were not only fighting the elements here, but also the symptoms of altitude sickness. These include a severe drop in performance, lightheadedness, nausea, and a racing heart. All things you don't want to have in a hurricane with severe snowfall, 0-meter visibility, and freezing temperatures. But on the descent on the west side, they had to contend with even worse conditions. Here the snow was 1.5 meter to 2 meters high and visibility was much worse due to the fog. This is not an uncommon phenomenon, as the wind shifts the snow to the side away from the wind. In this case, snow was blown from the east to west of the pass. There are orientation poles on the way down the valley on the west side. However, visibility was so poor that it was impossible to see from one to the other. Whiteouts, disorientation, storm, cold, and altitude sickness, these were the dangers faced by trekkers, locals, and guides. In this situation, even small mistakes or injuries can have serious consequences. On top of that, many had no way to seek shelter, as many were traveling without tents or emergency equipment, as they trekked from hut to hut. Towards afternoon, visibility improved to approximately 300 meters. Nevertheless, many continued to face a difficult path. Those who did not move through waist-high snow near the pass had to be careful further down that they did not slip on the melting snow and injure themselves. Rescue by rescue forces would have been out of the question. Even if rescuers could have gone directly, the telephone and cell phone connections were down due to the snow and the associated power outage. For a long time, the extent of the disaster was unclear. 3 days later, 17 people were still missing. In the end, 518 people were rescued, including over 300 trekking tourists. Unfortunately, 43 people lost their lives. Most of them were from Nepal, including 3 yak herders. Among the dead were also tourists from Canada, Poland, Israel, Slovenia, India, and Vietnam. May they find their peace in the mountains. Once again, it shows that simple undertakings can turn into life-threatening situations when the weather changes. If you're interested in more stories like this, check out our video on the Haute Route drama. Until next time. If you liked the video, leave a like and follow us for more mountain stories.